Today we take time to honor an educator, a political activist, and a community servant we have lost.
She was such an incredible woman.
Betty was always one of those special people that you can't forget.
A tribute to Betty Kinser, coming up on WGLT's Sound Ideas. Good evening, I'm Lauren Warnicki. Also on today's show, a murder trial that challenges jurors' assumptions plays out at Community Players Theater.
They might even, be faced with some of their own prejudices that they might not know that they hold.
And a Venezuelan jazz singer blazes her own trail in the Bloomington-Normal music scene. That's coming up after a Bloomington-Normal news update. This is Sound Ideas on 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.
Support for WGLT comes from Bloomington-Normal Audiology. Hear My Story continues with local patient Paul Brandt.
So I just went without them for all those years. I talked to somebody who had recently gotten hearing aids and talked about the fact that they were connected to the TV. And so that kind of prompted me to try it again.
Paul's full story can be found at bnaudiology.com.
Of Illinois State University in Normal. This is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. I'm Lauren Warnicki, in for John Norton. Longtime community leader Betty Kinser has died. The educator, political activist, and community servant shed a bright light on the community for decades. WGLT's Charlie Schlenker has this appreciation on the life of Betty Kinser.
Lots and lots of people are remembering Betty Kinser fondly, not only for her many contributions, but her vivid personality.
She was such an incredible woman.
Betty was always one of those special people that you can't forget.
Vivacious and gregarious. She had several lives, right?
Well, she always had the greatest enthusiasm. She was a bundle of energy. She was just wonderful to be around.
Just an incredible person.
Those were McLean County Democratic Party Chair Patrick Cortese, former congressional candidate Mike Kelleher, former Illinois State University Trustees Chair Mike McCuskey, former Bloomington Mayor, County Board Member, and congressional candidate Terry Renner, and former ISU student trustee Aaron Von Qualen. Kinser spent decades at Illinois State University in various roles in the College of Fine Arts, but she also briefly taught high school art. One of her students was Mike Kelleher. He tells the story of her noticing another student cheating by copying from Kelleher.
Of course, I was a freshman at the time, and this kid would have beat me up if I had told on him. So Betty was so tough, and she called this kid out, and she told him that he shouldn't do that. And, of course, I just loved how vivacious and gregarious she was.
Kinser was energized by the congressional campaign of her former student 24 years ago when Kelleher ran for office. Former Bloomington Mayor Terry Renner says that was the start of a big contribution by Kinser.
She learned, and a lot of people did in the Kelleher campaign of 2000, kind of cut their teeth. And then they became the energy of what really brought us to a two-party system in McLean County.
Renner says Kinser helped take the county from a time when the balance on the county board was 17 Republicans and 3 Democrats to what is now a 10-10 split. Kinser ran a couple of times for county board and served as co-chair of the County Democratic Party. And current County Democratic Party Chair Patrick Cortese says Kinser got into politics with the jubilance in which she did everything.
Helped run elections. She organized some of our fundraising dinners, much like she did with everything she took a part in. She gave it everything she had and then some.
Cortese says very few people could keep up with Kinser. The joy she took in doing things inspired people to do likewise.
Her willingness to do what it takes was incredible and inspirational. We're going to miss her.
Kinser was a go-to person to get things done all the way from step A to Z, and projects both at a high-level strategic sense and just the grinded-out things that have to be done. Renner says, for example, on his own congressional campaign.
For example, if you're trying to get mailers out, you've got to get volunteers to get in there to say, okay, we've got well over 100,000 cards that have to be addressed and make sure that the stamps are on them. And that is a very large operation. Betty was tireless in making sure that things didn't slip through the cracks.
Kinser strengthened the Democratic Party statewide, too, a lot. It's not everyone who, when they get sick, gets flowers sent by both Senator Dick Durbin and then-Senator Barack Obama. Another big aspect of Kinser's life and dedication was Illinois State University. Aaron Von Qualen was the student trustee when Kinser was appointed by the governor to serve on that board. Von Qualen says Kinser lived and breathed ISU.
Every sporting event for a long time I went to, Betty was right there. She was always wearing red. She drove a red Mitsubishi back in the day. She always had one of those Redbird tattoos on her face at the football games. I mean, she was Illinois State to a T.
Von Qualen says Kinser mentored him. She had lunch once a month. He says those were amazing times. She picked up the tab. Von Qualen says he learned a lot about professionalism from Kinser.
Just her thoughtfulness, her caringness, the professionalism that she brought to the board. And as you can imagine, sometimes debates and negotiations can get a little intense, depending on what the topic was, but I think she had a way of calming the board a little bit and bringing us back to focus on the best interest of Illinois State University and the students, faculty, and staff, because she had a profound way of doing that.
Another ISU trustee was Mike McCuskey. Now, when you get into a room crammed with a bunch of bigwigs, there's a natural center around which people orbit. You might think McCuskey would be that center. For example, he's currently the Legislative Inspector General for the state of Illinois. But McCuskey says when Kinser was in the room, the center was not him.
If you were around Betty, she attracted the crowd, she attracted the friends and the people, and then she introduced me to them. So the fact that I was a federal judge or chairman of the Board of Trustees wasn't a big deal when you were around Betty, because she had probably thousands of friends.
That's not to say Kinser sought the limelight or tried to take over. McCuskey says Kinser was just so genuine a person it happened as people responded to her warmth. He says you should not let the warmth disguise Kinser's steely determination. She had a serious stroke while on the board. McCuskey says he happened to visit her in the hospital the day she began to walk again, something doctors weren't sure would happen.
Always had a smile, always in a good mood. Even when she, had almost died with this stroke, and she's trying to get up and do her first steps. I know it was painful, but Betty wasn't going to let you think that she was anything but Betty with a smile.
Kinser did recover. She returned to the ISU board and to full activity in the community. Having packed 5 lives into one, she leaves behind a political party, a family, a community, a state, and a university made much better for her work and energy. Betty Kinser was 83. I'm Charlie Schlenker.
Roseanne Cash says mixing art and love can be tricky.
We can definitely bring personal stuff into the studio. He says, I don't want you to sing that note, and I think he doesn't love me.
The Wheel, the album that brought her and her husband, /producer John Leventhal together, has been re-released 30 years later. That conversation Saturday on Weekend Edition from NPR News.
Wake up with Weekend Edition tomorrow morning on 89.1 WGLT.
This is Sound Ideas. I'm Lauren Warnicki. The Community Players open 12 Angry Jurors tonight. Based on Reginald Rose's 1954 teleplay presented by Westinghouse and subsequent feature film 12 Angry Men, the dramatic play begins at the end of a murder trial in which a teenager with a rough upbringing stands accused of murdering his father. A jury of peers is tasked with deciding the boy's fate. One of those jurors is Mia Carrillo. She plays juror number 2. The first question they ask themselves, guilty or not guilty?
My character, juror number 2, is one of those that she's a little bit unsure of herself. She doesn't really know which side is the correct one. So she kind of goes back and forth through the entire play.
What about you personally? Do you agree with your character's ultimate assessment?
I think, yes. I second guess everything, and I'm super scared all the time, and I think I relate to her in that way. So she definitely I would say is similar to me in that way, where I'm like, yeah, you know what, girl, I get you.
Most of the jury ultimately jumps to the conclusion that this person is guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And then through the course of the play, some people evolve or change their decisions. Just talk through like what that kind of puts on the audience, right? That I think sometimes the audiences are also forced to question their assumptions.
We do a pretty decent job painting a picture of who this kid is outside of the descriptors that we have from the courtroom and from the evidence and whatnot. I think that's actually like a big part of the discussion is his identity. I think that there's some jurors that are basing their entire decision off of who he is, and whether that's his race or his, his upbringing or his economic situation. Based on all of that, that's how some of the jurors decide. And I think with the audience kind of coming into our brains and like seeing why these jurors are making the decisions that they are, I think they might even be faced with some of their own prejudices that they might not know that they hold.
Murder in the first degree, premeditated homicide, is the most serious charge tried in our criminal courts. You've heard a long and complex case, gentlemen, and it is now your duty to sit down to try and separate the facts from the fancy. One man is dead. The life of another is in your hands.
The original teleplay 12 Angry Men is a picture of its time. There is this quote-unquote jury of peers that is all middle-aged white men in suits and top hats. And so in casting this with a gender-neutral, much more racially diverse and age-diverse cast, in your opinion, how does that change things or not in the way we perceive this play?
I would say that having a diverse cast 100% changes the way that this play is going to be received by the audience, and it also changes the way that us as the actors perform the piece, because the way that our characters interact with each other definitely is impacted by those identities. There are jurors who relate to this kid that is on trial, and there are characters that interact with those, jurors, and the way that race and gender identity plays into our acting elevates the play a lot.
I don't know if this is the case in 12 Angry Jurors as it is in 12 Angry Men, but one of the characters, I think it's juror number 11, is an immigrant.
I have always thought that a man was entitled to have unpopular opinions in this country. This is the reason I came here. In my own country, I'm ashamed.
Look, what are we supposed to do now? Listen to the whole history of your country?
I think for me personally, I very much value American democracy. Both of my parents are immigrants, and so this is a story that's very, very near and dear to my heart. And I think that our production just does a great job showing you the viewpoints from juror number 11, and because there are other jurors played by, people of color and whatnot, we bring our own personal experiences into our characters, and I think that plays a part in making this show alive.
It is certainly a theatrical, kind of romanticized picture of what the jury process is, I'm sure. But what strikes me as so interesting is how each of the jurors has to make a decision about who they believe.
Yeah. Well, juror number 2 is definitely, she's like a little wallflower, or at least my version is. And I think she listens very carefully to every single word that the people around her are saying. I'm playing this character pretty young because I'm young, and also it helps the characterization, but I think she values what the people who are older and more experienced than her are saying, and so she's listening very closely. By the end, she pieces it all together in a way that makes sense to her, because finally somebody has presented something that you cannot argue against. And so that's the turning point for her is she's curious about a few different things, and she asks some questions, and she's listening to everything that people are saying. And in the beginning, she really doesn't know. There are so many questions, and there are some answers, and there's a lot that aren't. And I think that's part of the show is kind of realizing that sometimes you're like maybe not going to know all of the answers, and you just have to make a decision based on everything that you know and kind of hope that you're doing the right thing. Part of this play is giving people chances, and I think that by the end, everyone has kind of, made their decisions based off of that.
This is Paul Brenson saying goodnight for Westinghouse, who have made more than 40 million...
12 Angry Jurors opens tonight and runs 2 weekends at Community Players in Bloomington. I spoke to juror number 2, Mia Carrillo, who makes her Community Players debut.
Support for arts and culture coverage on WGLT comes from PNC Financial Services. PNC is committed to supporting local arts and culture events in the communities they serve.
And while Community Players opens 12 Angry Jurors, one Bloomington attorney has become the Illinois Supreme Court's top civility czar. His role is aimed at helping judges and lawyers be, well, just a little less angry.
Lawyers are zealous advocates, and I think where we're trying to address the issues are where that zealous advocacy goes overboard.
A conversation with attorney John Kim. That's Monday on Sound Ideas. Finally, this evening on Sound Ideas, Venezuelan jazz singer Maria Alejandra Rodriguez moved to the Twin Cities in 2022. She was looking for a fresh start. Rodriguez left the hustle of New York's jazz scene, committed to sobriety, and got a job cleaning hospital rooms. She sings in her car. She sings in the park. And Saturday, she'll sing at Jazz Up Front, debuting there with Central Illinois-based Brazilian guitarist Jose Emilio Gobo, plus Jay Ferguson on drums and Max Beckman on bass. Rodriguez also plays cuatro, a 4-stringed Venezuelan instrument that's kind of like a cross between a guitar and a ukulele. Her style blends the rhythms of her country with American jazz standards and bossa nova, which she says is better heard than described. You hold this music in you from Venezuela, from your own collection of different types of jazz. How do you do that here? Is there anyone else doing this here, that you can relate to?
Well, it's going to take time, no? I don't have no rush.
No rush.
I will be patient and, meet other musicians and continue with my talent. And before, always is ambition and, I need to sing and I'm happy here because I don't find musicians to play. Now, the first is to feel good, feel serenity and, and if I focus in myself and my stability and my sobriety and to empty my heart with a spiritual life, everything is going to come in.
When you're a little bit younger and you're just hustling, right? You're chasing, you're just hungry and aggressive and trying to get the gig and be a star and,
Well, for that, I live in Miami after my New York and, I made grown decisions.
Yeah.
And now I say, okay, no escape of my reality. I have to stay here. The happiness, I will find my happiness in whatever place where I am, and the opportunity is going to open. No?
And you're playing all together, or are you doing your own set and then Jose playing his own set, but it's all together, right?
All together.
Yeah.
All together. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I play with my instrument, one songs to show my culture from Venezuela, for example. Horas de amor, solita por la llanura, con tu calor, tus besos y tu ternura, me prometiste que Yo no te quiero ni puedo pensar en ti. Y esa noche sin motivo y sin razón mataste toda ilusión de aquellas horas tan bellas que dejaron onda nueva en mi triste corazón. Y me dejaste solita con las estrellas. Y me dejaste solita con las estrellas. Y me dejaste solita con las estrellas. It's an example.
Just like that.
Yeah, it's a pasaje. It's a rhythm from Venezuela, very popular, no? Folklore, folk music from my country.
There is so much publicity about your country right now. How does that make you feel?
Well, the only thing that I can do to love and help my country is to sing the music from over there, to continue compose my music, because my music, I use rhythm from my country, 3/4, vals, 6/8, danza, merengue, for example. Aquí canto mis penas con tal que ya no duela. Seguir el transitar con la ilusión de reencontrar brillo y anhelo, nuevos momentos de despertar. This is my music with rhythm from Venezuela, merengue, very traditional. It's not easy to play with other musicians. They need to study the rhythm, no? But I think so sometimes the musician, I can't play with her because it's hard, you know? Yeah. But I am very grateful because I can sing other styles, and I will continue develop my skill to sing other styles, no? World music, you know? But this is the thing that I can do to help my country. Continue singing and focus on the positive thing and focus in myself.
Will you play me one more song?
Of course.
Yeah.
Boleros or what?
Bossa Nova.
Oh, Bossa Nova.
Not the girl from Ipanema.
I am not ready for it. Eu sei que vou chamar, por toda a minha vida eu vou chamar. Em cada despedida eu vou chamar, desesperadamente eu sei que vou chamar. E cada vez
Maria Alejandra Rodriguez and Jose Emilio Gobo headline tomorrow at Jazz Up Front. Rodriguez earned her music education degree in Venezuela. She hopes to someday teach bilingual music classes here in Bloomington-Normal while continuing to sing, play, and write music professionally. That'll do it for today. Thanks for choosing WGLT's Sound Ideas, made possible in part by Bloomington-Normal Audiology. I'm Lauren Warnicki. Story help today also came from Charlie Schlenker. Ryan Toohey edits the show. This is 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.